The memorial stone had no inscription. No name, no dates, no flowery epitaph about heroic sacrifice. Just smooth, polished granite, sitting in the corner of the Terran military cemetery like a forgotten afterthought. I should have walked past it, should have minded my own business, completed my intelligence-gathering mission, and reported back to the Vorthak High Command like any proper xenobiologist would. But something about that nameless grave made my secondary stomach clench with curiosity. Strange, isn't it? I spun around, my forearms instinctively reaching for my concealed plasma disruptor. A human female stood behind me, her pale blue eyes studying the gravestone with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. She had the weathered look of a veteran, scars crisscrossing her neck, like tribal markings. "I beg your pardon," I managed, hoping my vocal translator was working properly. Humans had such peculiar speech patterns. "The grave," she said, nodding toward the stone. "Everyone who visits here asks about it. Who's buried there? Why no name?" Always the same questions. My primary heart rate spiked. Had she identified me as non-human? My biocamouflage was military grade, designed to fool even close inspection, but humans had proven annoyingly perceptive during our recent conflicts. "I was merely observing," I said carefully. She laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Observing? Right. Let me guess you are writing a book about war memorials, doing research for a documentary, or maybe you are just another tourist with a morbid fascination for dead soldiers." "Actually, I'm a journalist," I lied smoothly, "writing about forgotten heroes of the Centauri campaign." "Forgotten heroes." She repeated the words like they tasted bitter. "Yeah, that's one way to put it. Walk with me." Before I could object, she started down the gravel path that wound between rows of white markers. Each one bore a name, rank, and date. Marcus Webb, Sergeant, 230-87-2391. Elena Vasquez, Lieutenant, 2385-2391. Thomas Park, Private, 239. She asked, without looking back. I did it. The death dates. All the same year the Vorthak Empire had launched our first major offensive against human colonies. The year we'd learned that these soft pink creatures weren't quite as helpless as our initial assessments had suggested. "The siege of Kepler Station," I said, hoping I sounded appropriately respectful rather than like someone who'd helped plan the attack. Bingo. 3,000 human soldiers against a full Vorthak battle fleet. Odds were about as good as a snowball's chance in a plasma furnace, but they held the line for 6 months. Long enough for civilian evacuation ships to reach the outer systems. She stopped walking and turned to face me. Her eyes were cold, calculating. "You know what's funny about that battle?" "What's funny about it?" I asked, though I suspected I wouldn't enjoy the answer. The Vorthak had every advantage. Superior technology, overwhelming numbers, perfect tactical positioning. Should have been a 3-day mop-up operation. Instead, it took them half a year and cost them 40% of their fleet. My throat went dry. Those casualty figures were classified information. How could she possibly know? "The official reports called it a Pyrrhic victory for the Vorthak," she continued. "But here's the thing about official reports. They don't always tell the whole story." We'd reached the far edge of the cemetery now, where the memorial stone sat in its isolated corner. Up close, I could see subtle weathering on the granite, evidence of acid rain and time's passage. Someone had left fresh flowers at its base. White lilies, their petals already browning at the edges. "So whose grave is it?" I asked, genuinely curious now despite my better judgment. "Nobody's. I don't understand." She knelt beside the stone and touched its surface with surprising gentleness. "This isn't a grave. It's a monument. A warning, you might say." "A warning about what?" "About the man who was buried without a name. The one who turned the tide at Kepler Station. The one who cost the Vorthak Empire more than they bargained for." My blood chilled. During the Kepler operation, our forces had encountered unexpected resistance from a single human operative, someone who'd sabotaged critical systems, fed false intelligence to our commanders, and somehow managed to stay one step ahead of our best hunters for months. We'd never identified him, never even gotten a clear vision. Command had classified the entire incident to avoid embarrassing questions about how one human had nearly derailed a military operation involving 3 fleets. "You are talking about ghost stories," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Am I?" She stood up, brushing dirt from her knees. "Tell me, have you ever heard of Operation Lazarus?" The name hit me like a physical blow. Operation Lazarus was beyond classified. It was the kind of secret that got entire intelligence divisions memory wiped. How could this human possibly know about it? "I'm not familiar with that designation," I lied. "Of course you are not. Because officially, it never happened. Just like the man buried here never existed. Just like the Vorthak never suffered their worst intelligence failure in recorded history." She was toying with me now like a predator playing with wounded prey. But how much did she actually know? And more importantly, how much did she suspect about my true identity? "You seem very well informed about military operations," I observed. "I should be. I helped plan half of them." She pulled out a small device and held it up. A scanner of some sort, its screen flickering with data. "Biosignature analysis complete. Vorthak physiology confirmed. Nice disguise, by the way. Very convincing." My hand moved toward my weapon, then froze. If she wanted me dead, I'd already be dead. The fact that we were still talking meant she had something else in mind. "What do you want?" I asked. "To tell you a story. About the man who was buried without a name. About why every Vorthak intelligence operative who sets foot on this planet eventually finds their way to this memorial. About why that scares the hell out of your high command." "I don't know what you are talking about." "Sure you do. You are the 5th agent they have sent this year. 3rd one this month. Always the same cover story. Always the same questions about the memorial." She gestured toward the nameless stone. "You want to know why they are afraid of a dead man's memory? Sit down. This might take a while." I remained standing, every instinct screaming at me to run, but she was right about one when I did want to know. The mystery of Kepler Station had haunted Vorthak intelligence for years. Command had sent dozens of agents to investigate, but none had returned with satisfactory answers. Most hadn't returned at all. "Fine," I said. "Tell me about this ghost of yours." She smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. His name was Jake Morrison, Sergeant First Class 47th Reconnaissance Division, 32 years old when he died. Married, no children, volunteered for hazardous duty, just times before drawing the assignment that killed him. And what was so special about Sergeant Morrison? Nothing. That's what made him dangerous. She sat down on a nearby bench, patting the space beside her. "Come on, sit. Your legs are probably getting tired, maintaining that disguise. Must take a lot of energy to keep up the illusion." I sat, partly because she was right about the energy expenditure, partly because I was genuinely intrigued. "Go on." Jake Morrison was nobody special. Average test scores, average physical fitness, average everything. The kind of soldier who blends into the background, follows orders, and gets the job done without making waves. Perfect for reconnaissance work. Hardly sounds like the type to single-handedly disrupt a major military operation. That's what made him so effective. See, your people made the same mistake every conquering army makes. You looked for the heroes, the leaders, the obvious threats. You scanned for enhanced soldiers, cyber-augmented operatives, genetic modifications. You never bothered with the ordinary ones. She was right, of course. Our tactical doctrine focused on eliminating primary threats first. High-value targets, command personnel, specialized units, standard infantry were considered negligible factors. Morrison was inserted into Kepler Station 3 days before your attack, she continued. Official mission was to establish communication relays for the evacuation fleet. Unofficial mission was to gather intelligence on station defenses. Simple, routine assignment. Then, how did he become such a problem? Because Jake Morrison had one talent your computers couldn't quantify. He was lucky, stupid, miraculous, impossible luck. The kind that defies statistical analysis. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. Military planners feared few things more than unpredictable variables. And luck, by definition, was the ultimate wild card. When your boarding parties breached the outer hull, Morrison was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maintenance shaft 7 Alpha, section 12. Should have been vaporized in the first wave. Instead, falling debris blocked the plasma charges, and he ended up with a front row seat to watch your troops deploy. Fortunate for him. Fortunate for everyone except you. Because Morrison had something your intelligence files never accounted for. He was smart. Not genius-level smart, not tactically brilliant, just aware. He paid attention to details other people missed. Such as the fact that your soldiers were following predetermined patrol routes. Such as the communication protocols your officers used. Such as the maintenance schedules that kept your equipment running. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. Such as the fact that your entire operation was built on the assumption that humans would behave predictably. And they didn't? Oh, they did. Most of them. But Morrison decided to be helpful. Helpful how? He started small. Adjusted a few environmental controls to make certain corridors uncomfortably hot. Rerouted power conduits to cause random blackouts. Sent false maintenance reports that had your technicians chasing ghost problems throughout the station. Inner sabotage. Annoying but hardly decisive. You'd think so. But Morrison understood something your commanders didn't. Complex systems are fragile. Change one variable, and the entire structure starts to shift. Delay one supply convoy, and suddenly logistics become a problem. Cause enough small problems, and they start to compound exponentially. I was beginning to understand. Modern military operations depended on precise timing, coordinated movement, flawless communication. Introduce enough random variables, and the entire system could collapse under its own weight. He was improvising, I said, constantly, and that's what made him so dangerous. Your tactical algorithms could predict human behavior patterns, but they couldn't account for genuine spontaneity. Morrison never had a grand plan. He just kept looking for opportunities to cause trouble. Surely your commanders noticed the pattern eventually. They tried to, but Morrison was careful to make everything look like equipment failure or human error. A blown fuse here, a miscommunication there. Nothing that couldn't be explained by the stress of combat operations. She paused, studying my face. You know what the really scary part was? Morrison wasn't trying to single-handedly defeat the Vorthak Empire. He was just trying to buy time. A few extra hours for the evacuation ships to reach minimum safe distance. Maybe a day or two if he was really lucky, but he bought much more than that. 6 months, long enough for human high command to analyze your tactics, develop countermeasures, and prepare proper defenses for the next wave of attacks. Long enough to turn a war of conquest into a war of attrition. I sat in silence, processing the implication. The Kepler operation had been intended as a demonstration of Vorthak superiority. A quick, decisive victory that would demoralize human resistance and pave the way for easy conquest. Instead, it had become a grinding stalemate that consumed resources and revealed vulnerabilities, and Morrison died in the process, I said. Eventually, took your people 3 months to even realize he existed, another 2 to track him down. By then, he'd caused enough disruption to turn your 6-day operation into a 6-month siege. How did they finally get him? They didn't. Morrison died in a routine systems failure. Atmospheric processor malfunction in section 15. Pure accident. Nothing to do with enemy action. Died alone, never knowing how much damage he'd done to your war effort. Then how do you know all this? She smiled again, and this time it was genuinely warm. Because I was there. Lieutenant Sarah Kane, 23rd Engineering Corps. I spent 6 months watching Jake Morrison turn your invasion into a comedy of errors. Watched him drive your officers to distraction with problems they couldn't solve or even properly identify. And now I'm Colonel Sarah Kane, Director of Special Operations. And I make sure every Vorthak agent who comes looking for answers gets the same story. The true story about the man who was buried without a name. Why no name on the memorial? Because names have power. Put Jake Morrison's name on that stone, and he becomes a symbol, a rallying point for human resistance. Better to let him remain anonymous, just another unknown soldier who did his duty and died for it. But you are telling me his name now, because you need to understand what you are really fighting. Not super soldiers, or advanced technology, or brilliant military strategies. Just ordinary humans who refuse to behave according to your calculations. People who get lucky at the worst possible times and smart enough to take advantage of it. She stood up, brushing off her uniform. Take a message back to your high command. Tell them that Jake Morrison is dead and buried, but his legacy lives on. Every human soldier who improvises under pressure, every technician who finds creative solutions to impossible problems, every ordinary person who refuses to surrender when the odds are hopeless, they are all carrying a piece of Jake Morrison with them. And if they don't believe me, then they will keep sending agents to investigate. And every one of them will end up sitting right here, listening to the same story about the man who was buried without a name. She turned to walk away, then paused. Oh, and one more thing. Your biocamouflage is impressive, but it doesn't fool our new detection systems. We have been tracking you since you landed. Are you going to arrest me? No, you are going to walk away, file your report, and never come back, because now you know the truth about Jake Morrison. And the truth is more dangerous than any weapon we could ever build. As she disappeared into the gathering dusk, I sat alone beside the nameless memorial, wondering how one ordinary human had managed to change the course of an entire war. The flowers at the base of the stone were completely brown now, their petals scattered by the evening wind. But someone would bring fresh ones tomorrow. Someone always did, because even without a name, Jake Morrison had become something the Vorthak Empire couldn't fight, couldn't predict, and couldn't defeat. He'd become a ghost that haunted our nightmares and closed doors that had once seemed wide open. And the worst part? He wasn't even trying to be a hero. He was just doing his job. 3 days later, I stood in the briefing chamber of the Vorthak dreadnought Relentless Fury, facing a circle of my superiors who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else in the galaxy. Admiral Kreshvak drummed his claws against the tactical display, each tap echoing through the chamber like a countdown to my execution. So, he said, his voice carrying the kind of deadly calm that preceded mass disintegrations, you are telling us that our entire intelligence operation has been compromised by ghost stories. Not ghost stories, Admiral. Psychological warfare. I kept my voice steady, professional. The humans have weaponized the memory of Jake Morrison. They're using it to demoralize our agents and protect their true capabilities. Weaponized a memory. Fleet Commander Thane Moore's laugh sounded like grinding stone. Do you hear yourself, Agent? You sound like you have been infected by human superstition. With respect, Commander, I have reviewed the operational reports from every agent sent to investigate the Kepler incident. 17 operatives over 4 years. Only 6 returned with usable intelligence, and their reports contradict each other on fundamental details. Because humans lie, Admiral Kreshvak snapped. It's what they do. They fabricate stories, create false legends, spread disinformation. You have been duped by their propaganda. Then explain the tactical failures. The chamber fell silent. Nobody wanted to discuss the tactical failures. Since the Kepler operation, I continued, our forces have encountered unprecedented resistance from human defenders. Equipment malfunctions that shouldn't be possible. Supply chain disruptions that follow no logical pattern. Communication breakdowns that occur at the worst possible moments. We have attributed these to improved human technology or better training. But what if we are wrong? Wrong how? This from Intelligence Director Zarketh, whose mechanical voice betrayed nothing. What if the humans have learned to fight like Jake Morrison? What if they have trained their soldiers to be unpredictable, to improvise, to turn our own systems against us? You are suggesting they have institutionalized chaos, Director Zarketh observed. Interesting theory. Completely insane, but interesting. It's not insane if it works. And it is working. Our casualty rates in human space have tripled since Kepler. Operational timelines have become meaningless. We plan for 3-day operations that take 3 months. We prepare for straightforward invasions that turn into resource-draining sieges. Admiral Kreshvak leaned forward, his eyes narrowing to slits. Are you suggesting that the mighty Vorthak Empire is being defeated by randomly malfunctioning equipment? I'm suggesting that the equipment isn't malfunctioning randomly. It's being sabotaged by humans who have learned to think like Jake Morrison. Humans who understand that complex systems have vulnerabilities and that small problems can cascade into major failures. Prove it. I activated the holographic display, bringing up a tactical map of the Tau Ceti system. Operation Crushing Tide. Launched 6 months ago. Objective: eliminate human resistance in the outer colonies. Estimated duration 2 weeks. Actual duration ongoing. We know about Tau Ceti, Fleet Commander Thane Moore growled. Equipment failures, supply problems, communication issues, standard operational friction. Standard operational friction doesn't follow patterns, but this does. I highlighted sections of the map in red. Power grid failures always occur during shift changes. Communications blackouts coincide with supply convoy arrival. Environmental system malfunctions happen exactly when troop morale is lowest. Coincidence. 17 coincidences in 6 months. All of them beneficial to human defenders. I switched to a different display. Now look at this. Intelligence reports from Tau Ceti mention a human operative designated Ghost 7. Never been seen, never been identified, but somehow manages to be in the right place at the right time to cause maximum disruption. Another Jake Morrison, Intelligence Director Zarketh said quietly, or someone trained to fight like Jake Morrison. Someone who understands that the best way to defeat a superior force is to make them defeat themselves. Admiral Kreshvak stood up, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. Even if your theory is correct, what do you propose we do about it? We can't fight against luck and improvisation. Actually, we can. But first, we need to understand what we are really fighting against. I pulled up the next display, showing psychological profiles of human soldiers captured during recent operations. Standard interrogation techniques reveal nothing useful. The humans claim they are following doctrine, executing predetermined strategies, but analysis of their actual behavior shows something different, which is, they are lying, not about their orders or their objectives, but about their methods. They claim to be following plans, but they are actually making it up as they go along. They have learned to disguise improvisation as strategy. That's impossible, Fleet Commander Thane Moore protested. Military operations require coordination, planning, precise timing. You can't run a war on improvisation. You can if your enemy is dependent on predictable patterns. Our entire tactical doctrine assumes that human commanders will behave rationally, that human soldiers will follow orders, that human equipment will function according to specifications. When those assumptions prove false, our strategies collapse. So what's your solution? Admiral Kreshvak demanded. We need to think like humans. We need to learn to be unpredictable ourselves. The laughter that followed was not encouraging. You want the Vorthak Empire to adopt human tactics, Fleet Commander Thane Moore's voice dripped with contempt. You want us to abandon millennia of military medicine to copy the methods of primitive mammals. I want us to win. And right now, we are not winning. We are losing ground, losing resources, losing soldiers to an enemy that shouldn't be able to stand against us. Enough. Admiral Kreshvak's voice cut through the argument. Agent Vex 4-9, you will return to Earth. You will locate this Colonel Sarah Kane and extract actionable intelligence about human tactical doctrine. You will identify the methods they are using to train their soldiers in improvisation and chaos. You will do this within 30 days, or you will be reassigned to frontline infantry. Admiral, I respectfully request. You request nothing. You have 30 days to prove your theory or disprove it. If you are right, we will adapt our tactics accordingly. If you are wrong, we will find someone else to handle intelligence operations in human space. The briefing ended with the kind of abrupt finality that suggested further discussion would be hazardous to my health. I left the chamber knowing that my career, and probably my life, depended on successfully infiltrating the most secure military installation in human space. 4 days later, I stood in the ruins of what had once been the Kepler Station Memorial Garden. The cemetery was gone, replaced by a massive military complex that hummed with activity. Ships came and went at all hours, carrying personnel and equipment to destinations throughout human space. Getting inside had been surprisingly easy, almost suspiciously easy. "Welcome back," a familiar voice said behind me. I turned to find Colonel Sarah Kane watching me with an expression of mild amusement. She was dressed in combat fatigues rather than dress uniform, and she carried herself with the easy confidence of someone who owned the ground she walked on. "I wasn't sure you'd come back," she continued. "Most of your people don't. They file their reports and try to forget about Jake Morrison. I'm not most of my people. No, you are not. You are Agent Vex 419. Graduated top of your class from the Vorthak Intelligence Academy, specialized in deep cover operations and psychological warfare. You have been assigned to crack the mystery of human tactical improvisation and report back to Admiral Kreshvak within 30 days. My blood went cold. How do you know that? Because we have been monitoring Vorthak communications for months. Your people aren't as secure as they think they are. She gestured toward the military complex. Want to see what we have built on Jake Morrison's grave? Before I could answer, she was walking toward the main entrance. I followed, partly because I was curious, partly because running would have been pointless. If they wanted me dead, I'd already be dead. The complex was enormous, a maze of corridors and chambers that seemed to extend deep underground. Personnel moved through the halls with purposeful efficiency, but I noticed something odd about their behavior. They seemed to be improvising their routes, taking different paths each time, never following the same pattern twice. "Chaos Training Center," Colonel Kane explained as we walked. "We built it right here, on the spot where Jake Morrison's memorial used to stand. Seemed appropriate. Chaos training, the art of controlled improvisation. How to be unpredictable without being undisciplined. How to think on your feet without losing sight of your objectives. How to turn Murphy's Law into a tactical advantage." She led me into a vast chamber filled with training equipment I didn't recognize. Soldiers were practicing scenarios that seemed designed to fail, working through problems that had no obvious solution. Traditional military training teaches soldiers to follow orders, execute predetermined strategies, maintain unit cohesion, she explained. Chaos training teaches them to adapt when orders become irrelevant, to improvise when strategies fail, to find opportunity in disaster. And this works? See for yourself. She activated a holographic display showing a tactical simulation. 2 forces faced each other across a battlefield, one following traditional doctrine, the other employing chaos tactics. The conventional force had superior numbers and firepower, but the chaos force moved unpredictably, struck unexpected targets, created problems that cascaded through the enemy's command structure. "The key isn't randomness," Colonel Kane explained. "True randomness is just as predictable as rigid order. The key is controlled chaos, structured improvisation, disciplined unpredictability. How do you train for unpredictability? By making it necessary. Every exercise we run has random elements built in. Equipment failures, communication breakdowns, supply shortages, environmental hazards. Our soldiers learn to expect the unexpected and turn it to their advantage." She led me to observation deck overlooking another training area. Below us, a squad of human soldiers was attempting to navigate a maze, while dealing with equipment malfunctions, false information, and constantly changing objectives. "Watch the sergeant," she said, pointing to a woman who was coordinating her team's movement. Maria Santos, 3 years out of basic training, average test scores, average physical fitness, average everything. Just like Jake Morrison. As we watched, Sergeant Santos's communication equipment failed. Instead of following protocol and waiting for replacement gear, she improvised a solution using jury-rigged components from damaged equipment. Her team adapted instantly, shifting from radio communication to hand signals and visual cues. "She's not following doctrine," I observed. "No, she's not. She's doing what Jake Morrison would have done. She's making the best of a bad situation and turning obstacles into opportunities. And you think this will work against us? I think it already is working against you." Every human soldier who's been through chaos training carries a piece of Jake Morrison's legacy. They don't just know how to fight. They know how to make you fight yourselves. She was right, of course. The tactical failures we'd experienced made sense now. Human soldiers weren't just defending against our attacks. They were manipulating us into attacking ourselves. "So what happens now?" I asked. "Now you go back to your superiors and tell them what you have learned. Tell them that the human military has weaponized improvisation, that we have learned to turn chaos into strategy, that we have institutionalized the Jake Morrison approach to warfare. And if they don't believe me, then they will keep sending agents to investigate, and every one of them will end up standing right here, looking at the same training facilities, learning the same lessons." She paused. "Or they will escalate, try to break through our defenses with overwhelming force. And when that fails, they will escalate again. Until what? Until they realize that fighting humans isn't about defeating our technology or our strategies. It's about defeating our will to improvise, to adapt, to find new solutions to old problems. And that's something you can't do with superior firepower." We stood in silence for a moment, watching the training exercise below. Sergeant Santos' team had successfully navigated the maze despite multiple equipment failures and false intelligence. They'd accomplished their mission not by following orders, but by adapting to circumstances and improvising solutions. "There's one more thing you should know," Colonel Kane said quietly. "What's that?" Jake Morrison had a daughter, born 3 months after he died. She's 18 now, just graduated from the military academy. Guess what her specialty is? I didn't need to guess. I already knew. Chaos operations, Maria Morrison, top of her class in improvisation theory, tactical adaptation, and psychological warfare. She's been assigned to the 12th Special Operations Group, where she will train other soldiers in chaos tactics. You are perpetuating his legacy. We are ensuring that it never dies. Every human soldier who learns to think like Jake Morrison becomes a force multiplier, a living weapon against predictable tactics and rigid thinking. And if we adapt, if we learn to fight chaos with chaos, then we will adapt too. That's what humans do. We improvise. We overcome. We find new ways to turn your strengths into weaknesses. She smiled. Besides, you will never be as good at chaos as we are. It's not in your nature. She was right about that too. Vorthak society was built on order, hierarchy, predictable patterns. We could learn to be unpredictable, but it would always be a learned behavior, not an instinct. Your 30 days are almost up, she observed. Better get back to your ship and file your report. I nodded, knowing that my report would change nothing. Admiral Kreshvak and the other commanders would dismiss my findings as human propaganda. They'd continue to fight the war they understood, not the war they were actually in. And humans would continue to fight like Jake Morrison, not because they were ordered to, but because they'd learned that chaos could be a weapon, that improvisation could be a strategy, that sometimes the best way to defeat a superior enemy was to make them defeat themselves. As I walked back through the complex, I passed the spot where Jake Morrison's memorial had once stood. There was no marker now, no monument to his memory, just a busy corridor filled with soldiers preparing for the next phase of the war. But But his legacy lived on in every human who'd learned to think like him. In every equipment failure that wasn't really a failure. In every communication breakdown that wasn't really a breakdown. In every impossible victory that shouldn't have been possible. Jake Morrison had been buried without a name, but his name had become a weapon that closed doors the Vorthak Empire couldn't reopen. And the worst part was, he'd never intended to be a hero. He was just doing his job. The same job every human soldier was doing now, making the galaxy a more unpredictable place. One improvisation at a time, and there was nothing we could do to stop them. But as I reached the exit, Colonel Kane's voice stopped me cold. Agent Vex 41-teen, one final demonstration before you leave. I turned to find her holding a small device, its surface covered in blinking lights. A detonator of some kind, though I couldn't identify the specific type. What is that? Insurance policy. You see, we have known about your mission from the beginning. We have been monitoring your communications, tracking your movements, analyzing your psychological profile. We know exactly what you are going to report to Admiral Kreshvek. My hand moved instinctively toward my concealed weapon, then stopped. The training facility was full of armed humans. Even if I could take down Colonel Kane, I'd never make it out alive. You are going to tell him that human tactics are based on controlled chaos, that we have weaponized improvisation, that Jake Morrison's legacy lives on in every soldier we train. She paused, her finger hovering over the detonator's activation switch. What you are not going to tell him is that it's all a lie. What? Jake Morrison was exactly what he appeared to be. An ordinary soldier who got lucky and caused you some problem. The memorial, the training facility, the chaos doctrine, it's all theater, designed to make you think we have discovered some revolutionary new form of warfare. My mind reeled, but the tactical failures, the equipment malfunctions, the communication breakdowns, standard sabotage operations. Nothing mystical about it. We have got infiltrators in your supply chains, hackers in your communication networks, saboteurs in your equipment manufacturing facilities. Good old-fashioned espionage and sabotage dressed up as supernatural improvisation. That's impossible. Our security protocols are designed to detect conventional threats. They are not designed to detect humans who have learned to think like maintenance workers, supply clerks, and communication technicians. People who belong in the background, who never draw attention to themselves. Like Jake Morrison. Except we have got hundreds of them now scattered throughout your empire. Ordinary-looking humans doing ordinary jobs, causing ordinary problems that happen to occur at extraordinarily inconvenient times. I stared at her in horror. You have been playing psychological warfare on our entire command structure. Bingo. We figured out that your biggest weakness isn't your technology or your tactics. It's your assumption that warfare has to follow predictable patterns. So we gave you a pattern to follow. A story about chaos tactics and improvisation doctrine. A mystery to solve. A threat to analyze. A problem to overcome. While your real operatives worked in the background. Every time you sent an agent to investigate the Jake Morrison legend, you weren't looking for saboteurs. You were looking for super soldiers and chaos warriors. You were so focused on the myth that you ignored the reality. She activated the device, and I tensed for an explosion. Instead, the lights in the training facility shifted, revealing something that made my blood freeze. The entire complex was a facade. Behind the holographic projectors and false walls, I could see the real structure. Not a training facility, but a massive intelligence center. Hundreds of humans working at monitoring stations, analyzing data streams, coordinating operations across dozens of star systems. Welcome to the real Morrison Memorial, Colonel Kane said. Command center for the largest covert operation in human history. We have been using Jake Morrison's story to hide the most successful intelligence network ever deployed against an alien empire. My God, your people have been so obsessed with finding the secret to human unpredictability that they have ignored the most predictable thing about humans. We lie, we cheat, We make up stories to distract our enemies while we stab them in the back. She led me to one of the monitoring stations, where a human technician was tracking supply convoys throughout Vorthak space. Transport Fleet Zeta-7, carrying ammunition to the Rigel sector, scheduled to arrive in 6 hours. Unfortunately, they are about to experience a catastrophic engine failure that will leave them stranded in empty space. Sabotage. Sabotage, courtesy of Chief Maintenance Officer Williams, who's been working on Vorthak vessels for 3 years. Exemplary service record, never missed a shift, always follows proper maintenance protocols. He's also a human intelligence operative who's been gradually weakening engine components across your entire transport fleet. She moved to another station, communication array, Delta Prime, handling strategic communications for your outer colonies. About to suffer a complete systems failure that will leave your commanders blind and deaf for approximately 48 hours. Let me guess. Another human operative, communications specialist Johnson. 5 years of loyal service, perfect maintenance records, never asked questions about his assignments. He's also been installing backdoors in your communication networks that will allow us to monitor or disrupt your strategic communications at will. I felt sick. How many? How many what? Operatives? Saboteurs? Lies we have told you? She smiled. All of the above. We have got people in your shipyards, your supply chains, your communication networks, your intelligence services. Ordinary humans doing ordinary jobs, causing ordinary problems that happen to cascade into extraordinary failures. And Jake Morrison was exactly what he appeared to be. An ordinary soldier who got lucky and caused you some problem. But we realized his story was more valuable as a distraction than as inspiration. So, we turned him into a myth, a legend, a psychological weapon that would keep your attention focused on the wrong threat. While you built the real threat. While we built the real threat. Every agent you sent to investigate the Jake Morrison legend was an agent who wasn't looking for actual saboteurs. Every resource you devoted to understanding human chaos tactics was a resource that wasn't being used to secure your supply line. I slumped against the nearest wall, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the deception. How long have you been planning this? Since Kepler Station. We realized during that siege that your biggest weakness was your assumption that humans would fight like Vorth, honorably, predictably, according to established military doctrine. So, we decided to fight like humans instead, which means dishonorably, unpredictably, according to whatever doctrine gives us the best chance of winning. She gestured toward the intelligence center. Jake Morrison bought us 6 months at Kepler Station. We have been using the story of Jake Morrison to buy us 6 years of undetected infiltration and sabotage. And now you are going to go back to Admiral Kreshvak and tell him exactly what we want you to tell him. That humans have weaponized chaos. That we have learned to turn improvisation into strategy. That Jake Morrison's legacy lives on in every soldier we train. And if I tell him the truth instead, then you will be executed for spreading obvious disinformation. After all, how could primitive humans possibly infiltrate the mighty Vorthak Empire? How could ordinary maintenance workers and alien technicians pose a threat to advanced alien technology? The story about chaos tactics and improvisation doctrine is much more believable than the truth about systematic espionage and sabotage. She was right. The truth was too humiliating for Vorthak Command to accept. They'd rather believe in mysterious human super tactics than admit they'd been fooled by glorified janitors and repair technicians. Besides, she continued, we have already prepared for the possibility that you might try to tell the truth. Every piece of evidence you could present to support your claims has been fabricated. Every supposed saboteur you could identify is actually a loyal Vorthak citizen with an impeccable service record. You have thought of everything. We have had 6 years to think of everything. 6 years to study your psychology, your military doctrine, your cultural assumptions. 6 years to prepare for every possible response to our operations. And Jake Morrison's daughter is a real person with a real military career. But she's not a chaos warfare specialist. She's a normal intelligence officer who's been briefed on her role in maintaining the Jake Morrison legend. Every time she appears in public, every time she gives a speech about her father's legacy, she's reinforcing the myth that keeps your attention focused on the wrong threat. I looked around the intelligence center, watching hundreds of humans coordinate operations against my people. You are going to destroy us. We are going to defend ourselves. There's a difference. Her expression grew serious. We never wanted this war. But once you started it, we decided to fight it on our terms, not yours. And our terms? Honor, glory, predictable tactics. Conventional warfare between military forces. She shook her head. Your terms would have gotten us all killed. So we chose different terms. Deception, misdirection, asymmetric warfare against your entire infrastructure. And if we adapt, if we learn to fight like you, then we will adapt too. That's what humans actually do. We don't improvise for the sake of improvisation. We do whatever it takes to survive, to protect our families, to preserve our civilization. If that means lying to our enemies, infiltrating their organizations, and sabotaging their equipment, then that's what we will do. She led me back toward the exit, past monitoring stations tracking operations throughout Vorthak space. Your 30 days are up tomorrow. Time to go home and deliver your report. And if I refuse, then you will die here, and Admiral Kreshvak will send another agent to investigate, and we will tell that agent the same story we told you. Eventually someone will deliver the report we want delivered. As we reached the exit, she handed me a small data chip. Your evidence, recordings of the chaos training exercises, psychological profiles of human soldiers, tactical analyses of improvisation doctrine. Everything you need to convince Admiral Kreshvak that you have uncovered the secret to human military effectiveness. All lies. All lies. But believable lies. The kind that will keep your command focused on the wrong problem, while we continue to dismantle your empire from the inside. I took the chip, knowing I had no choice. Jake Morrison really was just an ordinary soldier. Jake Morrison was exactly what he appeared to be. But sometimes, being ordinary is the most extraordinary thing you can be, especially when your enemies are looking for something else entirely. As I walked back to my ship, I thought about the man who was buried without a name, the ordinary soldier who'd gotten lucky and caused some problems, the human whose story had become a weapon more powerful than any military technology. Jake Morrison had died believing he was just doing his job. He'd never known that his 6 months of improvised sabotage would inspire a deception that would fool an entire empire. He'd never imagined that his grave would become the cover for the most successful intelligence operation in human history. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the most dangerous humans weren't the ones who tried to be heroes. Maybe they were the ones who just did their jobs, day after day, without drawing attention to themselves. The ones who looked ordinary until it was too late to stop them. The ones who understood that sometimes the best way to fight a war was to make your enemies fight the wrong war entirely. And there was nothing we could do to stop them, because we were too busy looking for the wrong threat to notice the real one. Jake Morrison had been buried without a name, but his name had become a lie that closed doors we didn't even know existed. And the worst part was, he'd never intended to be a hero. He was just doing his job. The same job every human spy was doing now, making the galaxy a more deceptive place, one carefully crafted lie at a time.